Welcome back to my video series on our state robot contest. I promised you to make a video on how to solder wires. So I found an opportunity to do that, and what we're going to do is what I discovered is that we have a mechanical connector right here. And as I wiggle it back and forth, I noticed that the contact isn't making very well. So what I decided to do, and plus somebody had connected the blue wire to a black one, which really is kind of not what we want to do. Is if you're going to try to continue colors, it becomes difficult because I see this black wire and then I got to follow it all the way back to this point to discover that it's the blue. So the plan today is I'll show you how to solder a wire on here that will actually have a connector and will be ready to go. Now in my junk box of recycled wire, I actually found a blue wire that actually has a connector already on it. So, and this one's been done pretty well. Remember that we want to make sure that these connectors are on nicely. Always, after I smush them down, I always give them a pull or a tug to make sure that they're attached. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to remove this out of this line, and we're going to get rid of this, and then we're going to switch it out for the blue. So I have a soldering iron already set up that I plugged in, and it's been running here for a while. I have this little metal tray because I don't have anywhere to sit it, and this end gets real hot and I don't want to burn our board. I have flux. Flux will make that solder flow a little bit better, so I have that here. I also have some heat shrink, and we'll show you how to do that along with solder. This will be the solder that we'll use. I have a screwdriver to open and close the connectors, and then I have to have a heat source to be able to shrink the tubing. Now this is an open flame, so we just want to be careful when you're using this. Otherwise you can get a heat gun that will blow hot air onto this, but I just find it works really well, and we'll go ahead and use that. So the first thing I want to do is I have a side cutters here that let's just cut this off and then remove it. And then I never throw anything away, so we're going to save this. We're going to save this. Sorry about that. Next, we are going to take a piece of this and cut it, and then we'll be able to use our strippers on this just to break out in the end. And we've done this in the past. Didn't get it all though. Just clean that up. Okay, we'll want to take off this now and try to leave as much as the wire as I can. So I'm going to cut it here, and then we'll strip that off too. Now this is really, really tiny wire. I'm going to use this, see if I can get the the rubber to come off and still leave. There we go. Okay, so we have the two ends now that we're going to want to solder together. So we're going to twist these to get them a mechanical fit, and then we'll go ahead and finish. But to start this though, so that we can cover up this bare wire, we'll have this heat shrink or shrink tubing that we can use. Now this one's a little bigger. They make the smaller shrink tubing that you can use, but this should work out all right. And since I don't need the whole piece, I'm going to snip this off because we only need a little bit, and then I'm going to slide this back onto the wire and then keep that a little down here so that when we get done, then we'll slide it back up and then apply heat to it. So I want to then put these wires together to at least hold them mechanically by twisting them on top of one another, and then we'll add the solder to it. I'm going to give myself a little bit more wire on this one, and we'll use this guy to really wrap around this fragile wire. Now the wire that we have here is coming from the proximity sensor that senses metal. So these are really delicate, fragile wires that we're trying to get to hold together. Alright, so we don't really need much to get them to stay. As long as they're attached, we're good. Now, the flux is a chemical that will allow the solder to flow much quicker through the heat process, and you're best off to maybe have just a little bit of a smaller screwdriver to put this on. I didn't bring one over, so I'm just going to take a little dab, will do you right here, and then just put it into the joint. We don't need much because there's not much wire here, but there should be enough to cover those bare wires. And then put the cap on. Now this has some chemicals in it, so what I would do is after you've been, it says here, danger may cause skin burns or serious eye damage. Well, after you're done with this, make sure that you wash your hands and then wash off any tools that you have, because you don't want to get this in your eyes. I've never had to a point where my eyes were getting ready to fall out, but it does cause an irritation some. So I wouldn't take precautions. Anytime you're soldering, wash your hands off. So now the solder gun is real hot, so I can actually melt solder on the end. You can see it already causing a pool, and oops, I already dropped some on the table. So what you want is you want your soldering iron to be in contact with the wires. So you heat up the wires and then start melting these. Now that smoke is the flux, and as it gets hot, then you're going to find then that the solder flows in, contacts the wire, and then you can see here then that there's a bubble of solder that has covered all of the joint there, and it's holding it together. Now, if we didn't have the heat shrink on here, we'd have had a tough time getting it on here. So at this point then, you want to let it sit and cool down. Be careful with your soldering iron. Always have a place to put it that it's not going to burn anything, or you get it off to the side. And the next thing we're going to want to do then is use our torch. We're going to pull this over the top of our soldering wires. And then be careful as you heat this, because you don't want to damage any of the wires, and you can see that it is shrinking around our part and covering it. But you don't want to get too much on it, too much heat. See, there's a little bit of a flash. And then that keeps from touching it, damaging the wires. And that's it. We do a lot this when we're dealing with the robot over in the first robotics program, because we do a lot of soldering, a lot of wiring, and this just makes a really nice connection. Now there won't be then any kind of mechanical connection here. It's metal on metal with the solder, and it does really well. So there you have it. We'll see you next time.